I just asked the audience, we just put these pictures up. Anybody know what those are? Anybody want to say? Anybody know?
Rapid scan machine pictures.
Yeah, that's TSA. That's what you look like when you go through the TSA. And I saw that today and I thought, I don't even recognize my country anymore. I don't want to live in a country where that's going on. I mean, that's spooky stuff. That is spooky stuff. That's what happens when you want to go someplace on an airplane. I want to introduce a couple of friends of mine. Brad Thor is the author of Full Black, and Barrett Moore is a life continuity expert. Is that what, really? Is that what your title says? It was better than spooky, dude. This guy's trying to keep people alive, if indeed people like Brad and I are right, and he believes it as well. Then it's going to be guys like this are going to be at the top of the food chain, trying to keep people moving and alive. Let's start with, well, where do you want to start? There's some technology I want to get to, but
yeah,
you want to get a
background.
I set
that, you've done a great job, obviously, setting the table. What got me onto this topic, you and I have had all these talks over the years, and you know, there's a lot of what we talked about that ended up in my last book, Full Black. I want to read a quote to you quickly from Frank Church. The Church Committee investigations were done in '75. This was kind of a precursor to the Senate Committee on Intelligence, and he had this great quote about America's capacity to listen in to its citizens. This is in 1975. I know you got the condensed one you're going to put on the screen. I want to read just a little bit that's not going to be on the screen. That capability at any time could be turned around on the American people and no American would have any privacy left. Such is the capability to monitor everything. This is in '75, Glenn. Telephone conversations, telegrams, it doesn't matter, Church said. There would be no place to hide. If this government, our government, ever became a tyrant, if a dictator ever took charge in this country, the technological capacity that the intelligence community has given the government could enable it to impose total tyranny. And there would be no way to fight back because the most careful effort to combine together in resistance to the government, no matter how privately it was done, is within the reach of the government to know. Such is the capability of this technology.
Okay.
No revolution.
Okay. So that was 1975.
75. And now we've got to what is being called, and this is the term that you and I know that we queried the audience on before we came back from the break. What's been created now in this country is a digital panopticon. And for those who don't know what a panopticon is, there was an 18th century British social scientist who came up with an idea on how to design a new kind of prison, where you would put the guard tower in the center of the building and build the prison cells around that tower. So the prisoners never knew for sure if they were being observed. But it would help influence their behavior because they had to assume, because the punishments were meted out quickly and very, very severely. So these guys, you could leave them for 6 months and not watch them. But if you punished them bad enough and they thought they were being watched, it was a perfect way to influence behavior. We have that now in this country digitally. And that's where the concept of digital...
I mean, I don't see this in Dallas, but I know it's happening. In New York City, they're everywhere. The cameras are everywhere. And Bloomberg was on record saying last year that we just don't, this is a quote, we just don't want people to think they could go anywhere in New York City. Really? When did that happen? Yes, we do. It's America. Okay, so 1975. Let's take it to the next level, because was it Tips that came first or Promise?
Promise, and then Tips is, because it's a classified thing and I couldn't use the real name of it, I gave it Total Intelligence Protocol. Paradigm, okay. Sorry, Total Intelligence Paradigm. Okay,
so let's talk because this takes us back to the 70s with Promise. Explain what Promise was in the 1970s.
Promise is a system that was used to track cases throughout the federal court system. What it did, if you imagine a piece of information having like suitcase handles all around it, what Promise did is it allowed you to grab that case by any handle you wanted. You could grab it by the judge that was working on it. You could come in on the computer and look for the defendant, the arresting officer,
the crime.
How soon into a court case of this nature did this particular judge normally settle out? All this kind of stuff. Well, the intelligence...
It tagged every aspect of everything.
Everywhere. It was, you could grab it from any angle. This became very interesting for the intelligence community, who said, whoa, what if we could start using this to watch our enemies and to go after people by tracking them via their the trail they leave, the intelligence trail. So what ended up happening is this thing kind of got pulled into that world of intelligence gathering, and they started adding things to it. What's interesting, and one of the things you and I talked about, was this ability to get, for Promise to go hack into utility databases.
Okay, wait. When did this happen?
Mid-'80s. It started with a...
Are you willing to say any of your background other than a continuity guy? Because you have an awful lot of credibility when people know who you are. Are you willing to say?
I'm a guy who starts companies. I've got an intelligence background. I work for the government in a variety of capacities for quite a few years, and I've had a chance to build a security company, and we moved into a space where we're all about life continuity. And what that really means is we as a society spend an inordinate amount of time and energy protecting the inanimate objects in our lives, homes, boats, cars, whatever it is. And we're not paying any attention to the sanctity of life. And the reality is we need to be paying attention to that, because we're all individually extremely dependent on a very, very sophisticated and fragile supply chain. Most people don't begin to understand how their life dangles at a thread at any given day based on their individual circumstances. So perhaps today we can kind of shine some light on that.
Okay. So back in the 80s, he didn't answer the question, did you notice that?
Back to Promise.
Yes, back in the 80s, they started to bring this in and say, let's tag our enemies, and it started to morph.
It's the first version of the Terminator, okay? This is the original Terminator model, where you set this thing loose and it starts chewing through databases. It gets into stuff where normally you can't access it unless you go put the old tapes into the machine. This thing starts writing its own code to go back and get blind data, this is incredible for this kind of technology. It's amazing. It hacks into databases, and it particularly likes databases that have information about you that you wouldn't normally think would be useful to the government. Your electric bill, your water bill, all that kind of stuff. Your credit card bills, your banking, all this stuff. And what it does is creates a relationship tree.
Okay, now let me ask you, does anybody have any idea why the government would want the information on your water usage?
I may be housing a bunch of people to do something.
Very good, right off the bat.
That's excellent. And not only that, but okay, your water usage has gone up from the baseline. You've got more people in your house. Now I'm going to start figuring out who you've got in your house, because I'm going to go through all the people you talk to on your cell phone, all the people you do emails with, and I'm going to look at their water usage and see if it's gone down. If it's gone down, I'm going to look at their credit cards. Do they buy gas? And can I track the gas stations going towards your house? And I'm going to try to figure out who do you have in your house and what is it that you're planning. Because you've got Bill, Bob, and Ted there. Well, Bill, Bob, and Ted all took this class at Columbia about rules for radicals, if you will. And that's how this stuff starts coming together. And what's really scary is the Promise system started spreading around the world, and foreign intelligence agencies were using this to track down dissidents. And there's a lot of...
This is back when the Soviet Union was still around. They were killing the good guys using it because they were bad governments, and they stole our technology. But here's where it gets worse. Just like the Russians took Ebola and souped it up, our enemies souped this thing up even more, and we now have it. Do we not? Well, in theory.
Okay, so this is the next gen of this thing is to marry it with artificial intelligence, to be able to figure out not where you are, but where you're going to be next. And that's where it really starts getting scary.
Okay.
Well, let me interrupt you. There's a segue there. You were talking a little earlier about Google. You know, the change in the privacy policy, they didn't change anything other than their lawyers said, hey, you're going to expose yourself, you need to get this in the public realm. Most people are under the mistaken belief that Google is all about search. Okay? Google is all about artificial intelligence.
Big time.
Search is the mechanism that they are using to model and understand human behavior so that they can then move on to, as it is, artificial intelligence, which gives them ultimately, and I hate to use the terminology, but the Terminator, as it might be. The Terminator had artificial intelligence.
Yeah, the artificial intelligence, and that's what almost all of this stuff is you're given a piece of candy to keep you quiet. And the piece of candy is quick information, but really it is all about, read to, is it Into the Plex? That is all about artificial intelligence. I waited 10 years. I tried to get an interview with this man. 10 years. I was a nobody at the time, so it was a long waiting list for nobodies. His name is Ray Kurzweil. You know who he is? Mm-hmm. He's the guy who did invented the first synthesizer, the Kurzweil synthesizer. He's the guy who does speech to text. He was the first one to do that. He works for Google. He works for Microsoft. He is what's called a futurist. I talked to him when I was over at CNN. I spent an hour with him. 10 years I waited to talk to this guy. One of the most brilliant men and spooky men you'll ever meet in your life. He doesn't see a problem with any of this. But the future that he lays out, and remember, he consults with Bill Gates. He goes to Apple. They pay him large sums of money to say, we're thinking about developing this software. And he'll say, no, that's going to be old in 5 years. You need to go here. His calls that are right, his batting average is off the charts. He talks about artificial intelligence within the next 20 to 30 years, if it lasts that long, you will take your computer and you will try to turn it off, and as you approach it, it will say, please don't, I'm lonely. By 2050, the largest group of attorneys will be those representing artificial intelligence and computers. And the discussion will become, which life is real, yours or artificial life? You read Ray Kurzweil, read In the Age of Spiritual Machines. It came out in the 1990s. Have you read that?
No, you've recommended it. It's on my
list. Read it. It is really good. It came out in the 1990s. And then read Into the Plex, and you will see who's doing the work. It's pretty frightening stuff. Okay, I want to get to this board here next, which really kind of shows the loss of liberty, protecting liberty, and what they're doing and how they're doing it when we come back.